Okay. Kanina, or in our previous problem, which is problem number 3, the magnitude of the resultant is given. And then aside from that, its direction is also given. Now, in this current problem, almost similar, but the only difference is the orientation of the direction. And then aside from that, the magnitude of the resultant in this current problem is unknown. In fact, kung babasahin ko yung problem, the resultant of the force system shown in the figure acts in the horizontal direction. Hindi binigay yung magnitude, only the direction. And then we are asked to find the value of M and the magnitude of the resultant in terms of kilonewton. Now, kasi kung napansin nyo, the unit is in terms of pounds. So this is under English unit, but the desired value is or should be under SI. Okay, so we have only 3 involved forces here. We have P, which is 215. The direction is in terms of angular distance and then measured from the vertical. And the next is we have M. Okay, so its direction is not specified. However, dahil meron ngang grid line, so dito tayo mag-refer for us to have the direction of M in terms of slope. And the next is N, the magnitude is given, and then yung direction niya. So again, in terms of slope, no, kasi nga merong grid line. Okay, so ganun pa rin, gamit tayo ng point diagram method to simplify the orientation of our diagram. Ilipat natin yung tatlong forces doon sa ating Cartesian plane, and then let's start with P. So definitely, since the direction is northeast, so this must be placed on the first quadrant of our Cartesian plane. And then we need to also include the angular direction, which is 15 degrees measured from the y-axis. Next is M. So definitely, since its direction is southwest, so that must be placed on the third quadrant. And then the direction will be referred to the interval created by its line of action. So that is 1 vertical to 2 horizontal. Okay, and the next is yung force N. The magnitude is 575 and then the direction is again in terms of slope. So kung napansin nyo, the slope must be 2 vertical to 3 horizontal. Okay, so proceed na tayo sa pag-analyze kung paano natin makukuha yung magnitude ng force M and then at the same time kung paano natin kukunin yung magnitude ng resultant force. Okay, now remember that this is the equation that we need to use for us to compute the value of the resultant force. Now in this case, since the direction is specified which is horizontal, again, the direction of the resultant force is specified as horizontal. Hindi siya na-specify kung rightward or leftward. Pero okay lang kasi ang importante, alam natin na ito ay purely horizontal. And if that is the case, we said that if the force is purely horizontal, its corresponding y component is automatically equivalent to 0. Okay, so substitute Ry as 0, meaning to say the resultant force is also equivalent to the x component of the resultant. Okay? Now, let us this time compute first the y component of the resultant despite the fact that the value is equivalent to 0. So we will take advantage of this kasi nga the formula in computing this is by getting the vector summation of the forces acting in the vertical direction. Now, by analyzing the vertical components of the 3 inclined forces, so yung 215 definitely positive because it is acting upward. The y component of M is negative because it is acting downward. The y component of M, or rather N, is also negative because it is acting downward. So in terms of equation, magiging ganito siya. Okay? Now take note that this is equivalent to 0. So mamaya na natin siya isa-substitute. Focus na muna tayo doon sa values ng tatlong terms na nasa right side. So yung PY, PY, okay, yung P, ito, PY yung 215. So definitely to compute its component, Y component, so what we need to do is to analyze the description of the direction. So the direction is classified as an angular distance, and the next to that is to check what axis it is measured from. So it is measured from the vertical axis. So meaning to say, if 15 degrees is measured from the vertical axis, the specific trigo function that we can use is cosine function. So that is equivalent to 215 cosine 15. Again, in-expedite ko na yung procedures ng calculation, but if you want to understand the full context of the principle, why we come up to this equation, so what I suggest to you is to watch again problem number 1 and then problem number 2. Okay, or the principles. Now we have recorded lectures for that. Okay, next is, okay, so by going back to the process, how we can compute the y component of P. So that is again equivalent to 207.67. Next is my, the y component. So this is in terms of slope. So again, by ratio in proportion, y component of the slope, which is 1, multiplied by the magnitude of m, which is unknown, divided by the hypotenuse side of the slope. So we will be having this. And then the hypotenuse side of the slope is again computed using Pythagorean theorem. So that is square root of 1 square plus 2 square. So that is definitely equivalent to an unknown value because of the fact that the magnitude of m is still unknown. So therefore, isimplify pa rin natin, so that is equivalent to m over square root of 5. Next is ny. So the y component, again, the direction is in terms of slope. So what we need to apply again is ratio in proportion. So the vertical side of the slope, which is 2, multiplied by the magnitude of n, which is 575, over the hypotenuse side, which is d. So the hypotenuse side again is computed using Pythagorean theorem. So that is equivalent to 318.95 pounds. Okay, so therefore, going back to our general equation, balik tayo dito. So since we computed already the y components of the three terms, balik tayo dito. Substitute lang natin, py is this, my is this, and then ny is this. Lahat sila nakuha na natin. And then isubstitute na natin finally yung value ng y component ng resultant force na 0. Okay, so as you can see, we have already a one unknown inside an equation. So therefore, we can finally compute the value of the unknown element, which is n. So simplify na muna natin siya. And then transpose this on the left side of the equation, the negative side becomes positive. And then by applying cross multiplication, we will finally have the value of m. And that is equivalent to negative 248.84 pounds. Now, since the desired unit according to our problem is that it must be expressed in terms of kilonewton, take note, we are asked to find the value that must be expressed in kilonewton. So what we need to do is to convert muna pounds, okay, to kilonewton before we proceed in calculating the resultant force. Okay, so just to remind you or just to give you an idea about the conversion equivalence between pounds and then kilonewton. So every 1 pound is equal to 4.45, and then definitely 1,000 Newton is equivalent to 1 kilonewton. So these are the important conversion equivalents that we need to remember every time we want to convert pounds to kilonewton. So gagawin na muna natin dito is to convert na muna pounds to Newton, and then from then, i-convert na natin yung Newton sa kilonewton. Okay, so by using principle of equality, okay, so this must be multiplied by the value, no, correlating pounds and the Newton. So that must be multiplied by 4.45 Newton over 1 pound. And then to convert that to kilonewton, so we have to multiply it again by 1 kilonewton over 1,000 Newton. So cancel out ang pounds, cancel out din ang Newton. So the value of m in terms of kilonewton is equivalent to negative 1.107. So we finally computed the magnitude of m. So let's proceed to the calculation of the resultant force na. Okay, now nagamit na natin yung Ry. Tama ba? Nagamit na natin yung Ry. So the next value definitely, or the next principle that will definitely use is summation forces horizontal Rx. Okay. Now take note, ang Rx ay equal lang din doon sa resultant. Okay, take note of that. So meaning to say, once we have already the equation for Rx, we can finally have the equation that we need in computing the resultant force. So proceed tayo doon sa Rx, which is also equivalent to the vector summation of the forces in the horizontal direction. So just to give you an idea about how many horizontal forces that we have three. The x component of 215 or P, that is positive because it is acting rightward. M, negative because acting leftward. N, positive because it is acting rightward. So in terms of equation, we will be having this. Okay, so kunin natin yung first term which is Px. Balik tayo doon sa point diagram natin. So definitely, since the angle is measured from the y-axis, so the trigo function that we need to use to compute its x component is sine function. So meaning to say, Px is also equivalent to 215 sine 15. So that is equivalent to 55.65 pounds. Next, let us proceed in computing the second term which is mx. Okay, so proceed tayo doon sa reference point diagram natin since this is in terms of slope. So ratio in proportion tayo. So the horizontal side of the slope, which is 2, multiplied by the magnitude of the force, which is m, over the hypotenuse side of the slope, which is computed again using Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so therefore, let's compute d again by using Pythagorean theorem. So that is equivalent to 2m over square root of 5. Na wag na natin munang i-substitute yung m despite the fact that we have already the magnitude. Mamaya na lang. Ang gawin na muna natin, kunin na muna natin lahat ng expressions ng tatlong terms. Okay, now lastly is the third term which is the x component. So definitely, ratio in proportion uli siya kasi the direction is in terms of slope. So that is 3 and then multiplied by 575 over the hypotenuse side of the slope. So that is this is going to be the equation. And then D is definitely computed using Pythagorean theorem. So that is equivalent to 478.43 pounds. Okay, so balik na tayo dito sa general equation natin. And then i-substitute natin yung Px na 55.65, yung Mx na 2m over square root of 5, yung Nx na equivalent to dito. So 478.43. And then remember, Rx is also equivalent to the resultant force, ha? Okay, so therefore this is going to be the resulting equation. Okay, now since we have already the value of m, substitute lang natin siya. Okay, pero that must be expressed in terms of pounds, ha, para maging unit consistent. Kasi we can't use negative 1.107 because of the fact that its unit is in terms of kilonewton. Okay, dito dapat naka-pounds pa rin siya kasi nung inanalyze natin yung ibang forces naka-pounds din. So para maging consistent. So this must be the value in terms of pounds. And then we will finally have the value of our resultant force, which is also in terms of pounds. Now, kung gusto nating itong i-convert sa kilonewton, same multiplier. So multiply this again by 4.45 over 1 times 1 over 1,000. So this is the value of the resultant force in terms of kilonewton.